My son-in-law Ethan proudly invited the entire family on a luxurious 7-day vacation to the exclusive Silver Oak Estate in Napa Valley, California, but made it painfully clear that I was not included. "We only have budget for 5 tickets," he said with a smug grin. "Just me, Claire, Mom, Dad, and that's it." I simply looked at him, smiled softly, and replied, "Have a wonderful time. Enjoy every moment." 1 week later, when they stepped into the elegant marble lobby of Silver Oak Estate, the 5-star vineyard resort they had been bragging about for months, I was already there, standing calmly near the reception desk with my briefcase in hand. "What on earth are you doing here? Are you following us?" "Get out right now," Ethan shouted, his face turning red. Then the head of security, Thomas, walked over, leaned in, and quietly informed them who I was. In that instant, all 4 of them went completely pale, dropped to their knees on the polished floor, and started begging for forgiveness. If you're watching this shocking story, please subscribe to the channel, like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I had carefully set the dining table with the fine china that Laura and I received as a wedding gift 45 years ago. Classic white porcelain with delicate silver rims. Only 2 pieces slightly chipped after decades of gentle use. The soft evening light filtered through the same cream lace curtains we had hung in the spring of 2001, bathing the entire room in a warm, golden glow. I had prepared Claire's absolute favorite dish, slow-cooked beef brisket with baby carrots, pearl onions, and roasted red potatoes, using the exact recipe Laura perfected before the cancer finally took her from us. Handwritten place cards sat at each setting because those little touches still meant everything to me. They arrived 25 minutes late, Ethan pushing through the front door first, Claire trailing behind, already scrolling on her phone, his parents, Richard and Susan, following, as though they were inspecting a property they were about to flip. Susan wore a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Richard sported a tailored blazer with shiny brass buttons, and they both glanced around my modest Atlanta dining room like they had accidentally wandered into a thrift store. "Bennett." Ethan's handshake was brief, cold, and dismissive. "Thank you for having us tonight." "Of course. Please come in. Everything is ready." I had arranged the seating deliberately, Claire to my right, Ethan beside her, Richard and Susan directly across from us, and the head of the table still mine, at least for this one evening. I carried in the brisket on Laura's antique silver-rimmed platter, the rich aroma rising and filling the small room. "This looks quaint," Susan said with a tight, condescending smile, her eyes sweeping over the slightly faded wallpaper and the wall of framed photos showing Claire at every age from toddler to bride. "I'm so happy the regional manager promotion came through. Claire, you really earned it." She barely glanced up from her screen. "Yeah, it's all about networking, you know." Those words stung far more than she could ever imagine, because I had quietly made 4 phone calls to old colleagues and spent nearly 3 hours on the line with a senior vice president who still owed me a favor, just to make sure her application landed on the exact right desk. She truly believed it was all her own doing. Ethan reached for this bottle of 2018 Sonoma Valley Cabernet I had chosen especially for the occasion. A $75 bottle I probably shouldn't have splurged on. He studied the label slowly, eyebrows lifting in what might have been faint approval. "Now this is actually a decent vintage. Finally something worth drinking in this house." He poured generously for Susan first, then Richard, then Claire, letting the bottle circle the table and deliberately skipping my glass before setting it down well out of my reach. Claire watched the entire performance happen and said absolutely nothing. "Ethan always did have exquisite taste," Susan bragged, swirling her glass like a professional sommelier. "We raised him to recognize real quality." Richard leaned back in his chair, surveying my home the way an appraiser sizes up an estate sale. "Bennett, have you ever considered updating the place? We just completely redid our kitchen. Imported Italian marble, top-of-the-line appliances. The resale value increase alone was incredible. "Those curtains are charming," Susan interrupted, reaching out to finger the lace as if checking for dust. "They must be, what, 25 years old by now. They still work perfectly fine," I answered quietly, keeping my voice steady. Ethan shifted his chair farther away from me, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor, angling his body toward his parents and forming a clear wall. With Claire now half turned away from me as well, I passed the bowl of roasted vegetables. Ethan took it without even glancing in my direction. "So, big announcement," he said, grinning widely at Richard and Susan. "We're taking the whole family to Napa Valley. Silver Oak Estate, 5-star private vineyard tours, spa packages, the full luxury experience, leaving on the 20th. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "That sounds absolutely wonderful. Which resort again? Silver Oak. Completely exclusive," he continued, gesturing animatedly with my wineglass in his hand. We could only stretch the budget to 5 tickets, just the 4 of us and my parents. The mathematics of that statement hung heavy in the air. 5 tickets, 4 people explicitly named, the exclusion deliberate, calculated, and cruel. "I can pay my own way," I offered calmly. "I would truly love to join the family celebration." Claire finally looked up from her phone long enough to slide vacation photos across the table to Susan, then turned even farther away from me. "We really need a break." "Dad," she said without meeting my eyes for even a second. The room seemed to shrink around me, the air growing thick. Richard and Susan suddenly found their plates utterly fascinating. Ethan jumped in quickly with false sympathy. "It's nothing personal, Bennett. Just some real family quality time. You know how it is." My hand froze mid-air, reaching for the breadbasket, then slowly lowered to my lap. The brisket sat cooling on my plate, completely untouched. "Of course," I heard myself say, voice perfectly level. "I understand completely." I stood up, the chair scraping back sharply. "Let me go get dessert." No one protested or even looked up. Ethan was already refilling every glass except mine. I walked straight through the kitchen, past the dessert I never intended to serve, down the hallway, and up the stairs to my bedroom. Behind me, the conversation continued without the slightest pause, laughter rising as though my absence hadn't even registered. I closed the door quietly and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the same navy blazer I had worn to Claire's wedding, to her college graduation ceremony, to her promotion celebration last month, the same blazer they had just openly mocked. Through the floorboards I could hear glasses clinking, my wine being enjoyed, my table and my home transformed into their private victory party. Something deep inside me shifted then, precise and ice-cold, like the final tumbler clicking perfectly into place inside a lock that had been waiting years to be opened. The house finally grew quiet around 11 o'clock. I heard doors closing downstairs. They were staying the night. Too much wine to drive home safely. My wine, of course. I sat on the edge of the bed, blazer finally removed and draped over the same chair where I had laid out my clothes that morning, full of fragile hope that this dinner might bring us closer again. Sleep was not coming. I knew that already. I cleaned my reading glasses with the hem of my shirt, put them back on, and stared at the bedroom that looked exactly the same as it had for the last 25 years. Laura's empty jewelry box still sat on the dresser. Everything inside had been sold years ago to cover the mountain of hospital bills insurance refused to pay. Claire had been 24 then, sobbing uncontrollably at the funeral while I held her hand through the entire service. When exactly had she let go of mine? The memories came rushing in sharp. Jagged fragments, the $42,000 wedding I paid for out of my savings. Claire radiant in her gown. Ethan looking stiff and uncomfortable in his tux, while I quietly wrote the check thinking this is what fathers do. This is love made real. The $15,000 down payment on their Tesla they still drove every day. The one that sped past my house last Christmas without even slowing down because they were headed straight to Richard and Susan's for dinner. We'll pay you back soon. Dad. That was 4 years ago now. The $8,000 furniture package for their first condo. The emergency roof repair they couldn't afford. The $12,000 credit card bailout Ethan explained away as a temporary cash flow issue. Every single time I wrote the check without hesitation. Every single time Claire hugged me tightly and whispered, "You're the best dad in the whole world." I stood up slowly and walked down the hall to my home office, opened the password-protected laptop that contained a life my daughter knew absolutely nothing about. 4 properties glowed on the screen from my private spreadsheet. A boutique hotel in Asheville purchased in 2009 when the market crashed. Fully renovated and profitable within 20 months. A charming historic inn in Savannah acquired in 2014. 2 thriving bed and breakfasts in Charleston bought together in 2020. All quietly managed under Bennett Holdings LLC, registered under my middle name Alexander to keep everything completely separate and private. Current combined value $4.1 million. I had built this silent empire after Laura passed, working double shifts as hospital administration manager by day, taking night classes and weekend real estate seminars, saving every possible dollar while telling Claire I was just staying busy with overtime. She never once asked for details. I opened the private ledger file, $83,000, the conservative total I had given them over the past 13 years, not counting tonight's dinner or the phone calls that secured her promotion. $83,000, and they needed a break from me. Around 3 a.m, I walked silently to Claire's old bedroom, now converted to the guest room, stripped of most childhood traces, but a few photos still hung on the wall. Claire at 9 hugging me tightly at Disneyland. Claire at 17 proudly holding her debate trophy with my arm around her shoulders. Claire at 22 graduating college with a smile so bright it lit up the entire stadium. I touched one of the frames gently. The glass felt cool beneath my fingertips. When had that joyful little girl disappeared completely, dawn arrived slowly. Gray light creeping through the windows. Around 7 I heard low, conspiratorial voices drifting up from the kitchen. I moved barefoot to the hallway landing. The old house carried sound perfectly, if you knew exactly where to stand. "We have to play this very carefully," Claire was saying, using that calculated tone she reserved for closing major deals at work. "Make him think selling the house is his own idea, that it will simplify his life." Ethan snorted dismissively. "This place is enormous for one old man. Way too much house for him," Claire continued, voice gaining confidence. "He's stubborn, but if we frame it as helping him downsize, he doesn't have expensive taste anyway. He'd probably be happier in a small one-bedroom condo." Her small, complicit laugh echoed up the stairs like a knife. I pressed my back flat against the wall, listening without moving. "Once the house is sold, we can pay off all the cards and finally look at that bigger place in Buckhead we've been wanting," Claire said, excitement building in her voice. "Your parents won't even notice the difference. They'll just be happy to help the family." Ethan twisted the phrase into cruel mockery. "Help the family. Yeah, right. The family that needed a break from me. The family secretly plotting to push me out of the home Laura and I bought together with blood and sweat so they could upgrade their own lifestyle." I returned to my bedroom without making a single sound, closed the door silently, sat at the desk, and opened the laptop once more. My hands did not shake, not even slightly. They moved with cold, surgical precision. I typed Silver Oak Estate, Napa Valley, California for sale, and watched the listing appear instantly. Luxury vineyard resort. 90 elegant rooms, private winery, infinity pool overlooking the valleys. Asking price $2.1 million. Owner retiring, highly motivated seller. I opened my leather-bound journal where I tracked every single acquisition and wrote the new entry in perfectly steady handwriting. $2 100,000 August 20th. Silver Oak Estate. Downstairs, Claire and Ethan were probably making coffee now, rehearsing the gentle, caring pitch they would soon use to convince the old man to downsize for his own good. I stared at the glowing screen filled with photos of endless golden vineyards under California sun, and felt something crystallize deep in my chest. Not rage, something far colder and far clearer. Absolute, unbreakable purpose. I pulled up my business banking portal, the one Claire had never known existed available liquid assets after operating reserves. $2.8 million. I smiled then. Not a warm smile. Not a kind one. The smile of a man who had just decided exactly how this story would end. The laptop screen still showed the Silver Oak listing, when full morning light poured through the same lace curtains Susan had openly mocked the night before. I had been sitting at my desk for hours, coffee long gone cold, sleep now completely irrelevant. Purpose burned brighter than caffeine ever could. I heard Claire moving around the kitchen in the familiar rhythm I had known for 36 years. I waited exactly 4 minutes, then walked downstairs. She stood at the counter pouring coffee, still in her pajamas, hair pulled back in a messy bun. I had quietly set out her favorite French vanilla creamer earlier because old habits die hard. "Morning," I said softly, reaching for a mug. "Hey," she replied without looking up, eyes locked on her phone screen. I poured slowly, measuring every word. "Ethan mentioned you're all heading to Napa soon. Silver Oak Estate. It sounds absolutely incredible." "We leave in 8 days," she answered, sipping her coffee, still scrolling. She never once asked if I wanted to reconsider joining them. The exclusion was now permanent fact, not worth discussing. "Enjoy every single minute. You've earned the break," I said quietly, voice perfectly calm. "Thanks," she replied, a brief flicker of surprise crossing her face before the phone pulled her attention again. Ethan's voice drifted down from upstairs, already on a work call discussing quarterly projections and targets. Claire finished her coffee, rinsed the mug quickly, and headed back toward the guest room without another word. I listened to her footsteps fade away, then returned to my office and pulled up detailed satellite imagery of Silver Oak Estate, 45 acres of premium vineyards, 38 luxurious guest rooms arranged around a historic 1920s manor house, single private access road, nearest competing resort 12 miles away, owner retiring, highly motivated seller. My 3 favorite words in real estate. I opened the locked drawer, pulled out every file I would need: LLC documentation for Bennett Holdings, 3 years of tax returns proving strong, legitimate income, bank statements showing immediate liquidity, proof of capacity, everything perfectly in order. I reached for my phone without hesitation. Alexander Bennett calling for priority banking services. "Please," my private banker answered on the first ring. I had moved millions through their institution over the years. "Mr. Bennett, how may I assist you today?" I watched through the window as Claire and Ethan loaded their cars for another workday, completely unaware. "I need $2.3 million fully liquid by Monday morning. Combination of personal accounts and the credit line against the Asheville and Savannah properties." A brief pause on the line. "That is aggressive timing, sir. May I ask the purpose? Time-sensitive investment opportunity. Highly favorable terms. Can you make it happen?" "Preliminary approval by end of business today. Full documents ready Monday morning." "Excellent. Thank you. I'll wait for your call." I hung up before he could ask anything else. 30 seconds later, both cars pulled away, and the house settled into perfect silence. I spent the next 5 hours researching every possible detail about Silver Oak Estate full revenue history. Average occupancy running at 68%. Guest reviews mostly 5-star with occasional complaints about slightly dated bathrooms and occasional cell service issues. Staffing lean but experienced and loyal. General Manager Jessica Harper running day-to-day operations while the owner had gradually stepped back. Solid bones. Tremendous upside potential. By 3 o'clock, I had drafted a clean offer, called my attorney Marcus Evans, and scheduled an emergency consultation for 5. Atlanta traffic was brutal as always, but I used every red light to rehearse my explanation, keep emotion completely out. Present this as pure business with personal timing, not revenge. Marcus's office occupied the 22nd floor of a gleaming Peachtree Center tower. He met me in the conference room, tie loosened, reading glasses perched on his head. "Bennett, your message said urgent. What's going on?" I spread the documents across the polished table, the full silver oak listing, my complete financial statements, a precise timeline showing I needed ownership transferred no later than August 19th. He scanned everything quickly, expression shifting from professional curiosity to genuine alarm. "You want to close on a $2.1 million resort in less than 72 hours, with almost no due diligence." "Exactly right. May I ask why the impossible timeline?" "My daughter and her family arrived there on August 20th for a week-long stay. They have made it clear I am not welcome. I need to own the property before they check in." Marcus removed his glasses slowly and set them down. "Bennett, I completely understand there is deep personal motivation here, but this level of speed is commercial suicide. 0 real inspection period. The seller is highly motivated. I have cash ready," I countered calmly. "What is the actual legal exposure title issues? Undisclosed liens, structural problems hidden in the inspection you're waiving. You would be buying essentially blind. Then simultaneously place my Atlanta house into an irrevocable trust with myself as sole trustee and beneficiary. No forced sale possible under any circumstances." He studied me across the table for a long moment, saw whatever he needed to see in my eyes, and finally nodded. "I'll bring in a top California real estate attorney tonight. Expedite the trust documents. Whatever it costs. We'll make it happen." "Do it," I said. "Whatever she did to you, it must have been bad. She needed a break from me," I replied quietly. "I'm giving her one she will never forget." That same evening, I executed the irrevocable trust with my notary, then called the listing broker for Silver Oak Estate in California. "Mr. Thompson, Alexander Bennett here. I am prepared to offer $1.95 million cash. Close within 48 hours. Proof of funds attached to the email I just sent." The broker nearly dropped the phone in excitement. "I can have you on the ground tomorrow afternoon for a walkthrough. Book the earliest flight." I said, "I'll call you from the airport." I purchased the ticket for the morning flight to Napa. Confirmation arriving instantly. Across Atlanta. Claire and Ethan were probably enjoying dinner at some expensive restaurant, celebrating their upcoming exclusive vacation without the embarrassing old man in the worn blazer. They had no idea the new owner was already on his way. The flight landed in perfect California weather. Bright sun and cool valley breeze. A hired car took me straight up the winding vineyard roads to Silver Oak Estate. Rows of vines stretching golden and endless under the afternoon light. The retiring owner, Charles Reynolds, met me in the grand lobby. Late 60s. Shoulders rounded with visible defeat. "Mr. Bennett, thank you for coming on such short notice. When someone says all cash and 48-hour close, I clear my entire calendar." We toured the property slowly and thoroughly, the historic 1920s manor house with its stone walls and vaulted ceilings, the private tasting room smelling of oak barrels, the courtyard infinity pool that needed new tile, the luxurious suites with sweeping vineyard views, everything beautifully aged, tired in places but with incredible bones, like a grand estate simply waiting for new energy. "This was built by my grandfather back in the 20s. Charles said quietly as we walked the grounds. "I poured my entire life into it. But the big corporate chains moved in and I understand timing better than most. I replied, I am keeping it as a luxury resort. No condominiums, no teardown. It will thrive again. We returned to his wood-paneled office that smelled of aged oak and old ledgers. Your listing is 2.1, I said. I offer 1.95. All cash. Close tomorrow morning. He drummed his fingers once on the desk, then nodded firmly. You have a deal. Paperwork began immediately. My California attorney arrived by 6 on a red-eye from Los Angeles, sharp-eyed and thorough. Minor liens already cleared. Permits fully current. Title completely clean. By midnight, every document was initialed and ready. The next morning, we signed the final closing papers in the Vineyard conference room overlooking the hills. Wire transfers completed. Keys officially handed over. By noon, Silver Oak Estate belonged entirely to Bennett Holdings, LLC. I sat alone in what was now my private office, deed in hand, feeling the strange, quiet calm of a plan executed to absolute perfection. I opened the resort's reservation system and immediately located the booking August 20th through 27th, Harrison party of 4, Premier Vineyard View Suite, prepaid deposit already processed. I called Jessica Harper, the general manager, to my office at once, early 40s, highly competent, direct and professional gaze. Mr. Bennett, congratulations on the purchase. Welcome to Silver Oak. You are staying on as general manager. 20% raise effective today. Thank you, sir. That is very generous. You will earn every penny, I said, sliding the printed instruction sheet across the desk. Effective August 20th. Room reassignments and updated pricing structure take effect across the property. She scanned the page quickly, her frown deepening. Some guests have already confirmed and paid at the previous rates. Ownership has changed. Terms have changed. California law allows modification with 72-hour written notice, which will be sent this afternoon. And the Harrison party, specifically. Standard garden view rooms, 22 and 24, new pricing 40% higher on all services. Spa, dining, everything. Notification goes out today. She looked up slowly and studied me for a long moment. This feels personal. It is business, I replied evenly. Will you execute these instructions exactly as written? Another pause, then a quiet nod. Yes, sir, I will. When they arrive and inevitably complain, you will inform them that the owner is on property. Nothing more until I personally appear. Understood. Perfectly understood. I spent the remainder of the day handling legitimate operations, reviewing staff contracts, vendor bids, renovation priorities, scheduling essential maintenance. This was now a real business, not just a stage for theater. That evening, I walked alone through the vineyard rows as the sun set fire to the hills, painting everything in deep orange and gold. In exactly 48 hours, my daughter would arrive expecting paradise without me anywhere in sight. They would receive exactly what they had paid for, and absolutely nothing more. I flew home the next morning, removed every trace that I had ever left Georgia, and resumed playing the role of the quiet, resigned father who had accepted his exclusion. I helped Claire finish packing the day before their departure, found her favorite swimsuit in the attic, even pressed $600 in spending money into her hand at the door. Ethan smirked and muttered just loud enough. At least the old man is good for something. I simply smiled and waved goodbye as their car pulled away. That same night, I took a separate flight back to Napa, checked into the staff quarters under a different name, and prepared the final details of the stage. August 20th dawned bright and perfect. At exactly 2:30 p.m., their rental SUV crunched up the long gravel drive. I watched from the manor house window as Claire stepped out first, shading her eyes against the sun. Ethan surveying the property like he already owned it. Richard and Susan emerging with cameras ready to document their exclusive vacation. They had absolutely no idea what awaited inside. I positioned myself in the lobby alongside Jessica and head of security Thomas, tablet in hand. Looking every inch the professional new owner conducting routine business, they entered laughing, the warm scent of vineyard air following them through the grand doors. Ethan approached the reception desk with complete confidence. Harrison, party of 4, Premier Vineyard Suite reserved. Jessica typed calmly, paused exactly as rehearsed. Welcome to Silver Oak Estate. There has been an ownership transition, and a few minor operational adjustments have been made. Adjustment. Ethan's voice immediately sharpened. We booked the Premier Vineyard Suite months ago. What exactly does that mean? Jessica gestured gracefully toward the seating area with its leather sofas and fresh flowers. If you will please have a seat for just a moment. I will have everything ready shortly. They moved to the sitting area, Claire already pulling out her phone, Susan photographing the crystal chandelier overhead. I walked forward at a measured, unhurried pace, reviewing figures on my tablet, until I was less than 10 feet away. Claire glanced up casually, then did a double take, her face cycling rapidly through confusion, recognition, and pure shock. Dad, the single word hung in the air. Ethan spun around instantly. Are you kidding me right now? You followed us all the way here. This is stalking. I looked up calmly, as if only just noticing them. I'm handling some routine business on property this afternoon. Ethan laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound that echoed off the marble floors. You work here now. What? You took a job at our resort just to spy on us. Thomas stepped forward smoothly, hand raised in calm authority. Sir, please lower your voice. You are disturbing other guests. Ethan's face turned bright red. I want this man removed from the property immediately. Jessica spoke clearly and professionally across the lobby so every guest could hear. Mr. Bennett is the new owner of Silver Oak Estate as of yesterday morning. You are checking in as his guests. The silence that followed was absolute, thick enough to feel. Ethan's mouth opened and closed soundlessly several times. Owner Claire whispered, all color draining from her face. You bought the entire resort. I met her eyes evenly, voice completely steady. Yes, I did. Susan's phone slipped from her hand and clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. Ethan finally recovered, raw fury surging back. This is completely insane. You can't just... I can and I did, I replied, calm as ever. Miss Harper will now complete your check-in. Your rooms are fully prepared. Ethan's fists clenched hard at his sides. We booked everything in good faith, Jessica continued smoothly, without missing a beat. Silver Oak Estate honors all existing reservations. However, new ownership has implemented updated pricing and certain room reassignments. Full notification was emailed 72 hours ago, exactly as required by California law. Ethan yanked out his phone, scrolled frantically through his inbox, his face falling as he found the message. This says 40% increase on every single service. That is correct. New ownership. New pricing structure effective immediately. Claire stood frozen in place, staring at me as if she no longer recognized her own father. Jessica placed 2 key cards on the polished counter with professional grace. You are assigned to Garden View rooms 22 and 24 on the 2nd floor. The bellman will assist with your luggage. Wait just 1 minute. We booked the Premier Vineyard Suite with the private balcony, Ethan shouted, voice rising again. Due to scheduled renovations, those suites are unavailable during your stay, I'm afraid, Jessica answered calmly. Ethan turned to me with pure hatred burning in his eyes. You planned every bit of this. This whole thing is a sick setup. I allowed myself the smallest, coldest smile. This is a business. You made a reservation. Everything is perfectly standard. Claire picked up 1 key card with a hand that visibly trembled, eyes locked on the floor, unable to look at me again. The family followed the bellman toward the grand staircase in stunned, humiliated silence while other guests watched the entire scene unfold. Thomas murmured quietly beside me. That went exactly as you predicted, sir. Yes, it did, I replied. What happens when they see the actual rooms? In approximately 4 minutes, they discover garden view means the service parking lot and maintenance shed. Then they will return to complain, and Miss Harper will politely explain that everything meets California accommodation standards and no refunds are available under previous ownership terms. And so the performance began the angry complaints at reception, the desperate attempts to upgrade by paying the difference, the shocked discovery that every menu price in the restaurant had increased dramatically, the perfectly timed maintenance that made hot water intermittent only in their wing, the mysteriously weak Wi-Fi that worked perfectly in the lobby but dropped constantly in rooms 22 and 24. The pool closed daily from 1 to 4 for cleaning during the hottest hours. Every single inconvenience minor on its own, completely legal, and absolutely relentless when combined. By the third day, the family sat separately around the pool area, not speaking to one another, sunburned, exhausted, and utterly defeated. Negative reviews began appearing online. 1 star, vicious, accusing targeted harassment and discrimination. My calm, professional responses acknowledging the recent ownership transition and our commitment to excellence actually increased bookings. Potential guests appreciated the transparency and saw the complaints for what they were. On the 5th night, Claire called me from her room, voice breaking with raw emotion. How could you do this to us? Dad, how could you do this to your own daughter? This is beyond cruel. You wanted a vacation without me anywhere near you, I replied quietly. You have exactly that. When we get home, we're selling the house whether you like it or not. We need every penny. Try it, I answered. 2 words, flat and final. She broke down sobbing, and the line went dead. I was already on a red-eye flight back to Atlanta because while they were suffering in Napa, my attorney had quietly placed the certified irrevocable trust documents on the kitchen table where they would find them the moment they walked in exhausted, broke, and completely broken. Their final bill totaled $5,100, more than double what they had budgeted and bragged about. Cards were declined one after another. Credit limits completely maxed. Claire finally paid with the last available emergency card, while Ethan stood white-faced and shaking. They checked out a full day early, faces gray, moving in slow motion, not speaking a single word to each other on the way to the airport. I flew home the same day, arrived to find the kitchen destroyed, scattered mail everywhere, a decorative ceramic bowl shattered on the floor, a fresh fist-sized hole in the drywall, clear evidence of Ethan's final rage when he saw the trust papers. My phone began ringing that evening, Richard's voice shaky and small. Bennett, we're so sorry about the damage. Ethan completely lost control when he read the trust. The country club already asked about the trip. Someone saw the reviews online. Susan is absolutely mortified. I listened without a trace of sympathy. You chose your side. Now you live with the consequences. Claire called repeatedly over the following days, left voicemails filled with pure desperation about mounting debt, about divorce papers already filed, about needing help more than ever. I listened to each one once, then deleted them all. 2 weeks later, she appeared alone on my doorstep. No makeup, eyes red and swollen, looking 10 years older than her 36 years. Dad, I was a horrible daughter. I treated you like a walking ATM. I'm so sorry for everything. I let her in, sat her down at the same dining table, and for the very first time showed her the complete portfolio of 4 properties, millions in assets, a successful life she had never once bothered to see. She cried harder than I had ever heard her cry. All those years you were building this empire and I only saw the old curtains, the worn jacket, the modest house. I became someone who used you instead of loving you. We talked until the early hours of the morning. No promises, no money offered, just raw, painful truth. She came back the following week, and the week after that, bringing cheap takeout sandwiches, asking real questions about the business, attending debt counseling, moving into a small apartment alone. Forgiveness is never automatic. It is earned one day at a time. But she was trying, truly trying for the first time in years. And slowly I began to see glimpses of the little girl who used to run to me with every scraped knee and every childhood triumph. I had restored my dignity, taught a brutal but necessary lesson about respect and consequences, and left the door cracked open, just barely, for possible redemption. Whether Claire would walk through it and earn her way back was now entirely up to her. For now, that was enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left